Hey, welcome everyone. We're here today to do an interview, sort of a farewell interview for Colonel Eries Mentzer, the 42nd Air Base Wing Commander.
For one more day.
For one more day. And she's wrapping up a 2-year tour here at Maxwell Gunther and has had quite a few amazing accomplishments during this time with the 42nd team and with the other partners and on the installation, AU obviously, and 908 and our friends downtown, et cetera. So we're going to do a recap of some of your great things that you're leaving behind.
Thank you, Dr. Ali. I just, gosh, it's hard to believe 2 years has gone by so quickly. And, you know, just the amount of things that the women and men of the 42nd Air Base Wing have done in support of Air University, our mission partners, you know, our River Region community. It has just been extraordinary and humbling to be able to serve at this time in our nation here in Montgomery. And partner with you and your team to really move the mission here at Maxwell forward.
Great, great. Well, we're going to show some images to sort of get the ball rolling and get the dialogue happening. So I think we have some images here.
Oh my gosh.
So the first one.
Where did you get this?
We have your first time at Maxwell. And this is going to be shown on the screen here. This is Colonel Mentzer's family before she got married, and her father, her mom, and her siblings.
My siblings are going to be very upset that you're showing this photo. Wow, where'd you get that?
So this photo we selected, Lexi Aldridge found this deep in the archives. And what do you think, you know, what has been some of your time here connected to airmen and their families?
Wow. So in the photo is my oldest sister, Erica, next oldest sister, Erin, my 2 younger brothers, John and Jarian, and my father, who served here as an Air War College student as part of his career in the Navy. It's interesting because I'm wondering where my mother is, why she's not in the photo. And I've actually never seen this photo before, ever. And so I'm curious of where you got it.
It was in the yearbook for Air War College yearbook when your father was a student here.
Oh my goodness!
Back in the late 80s, early 90s. I forget when. But
yes.
And we'll get to these photos. So.
Yes. Well, first of all, I just, you know, a lot of who I am as a woman, as a mother. As a wife, as a leader, as an airman, that foundation started with my family. And certainly the, you know, your parents give you, you know, just the right amount of tough love and soft landings. And, you know, my mother was such an extraordinary woman. She was always so much more than the opportunities available to her. And, you know, she raised these 5 rambunctious kids. I was a little chubby back then with really bad hair. I can't believe we're showing this photo. You know, the strength of who I am really started with my mom and how resilient she was as a military spouse. You know, we lost her a couple of years ago, and I think you saw it as we were down at the event just a couple days ago. You know, I carry her in my service wheel cap. To remind me that I follow in her legacy and the work that I could do as a leader to make military service a little bit more welcoming, to remove some barriers. Because certainly as we relocated with my father from, I get all choked up when I talk about my mom, so
sorry,
edit this out.
Didn't mean to make you emotional this morning.
And then you showed my chubby photo. But as we relocated from location to location, you know, with the Navy from East Coast to West Coast, you know, it was a lot of challenges, and it made it difficult to serve. And that's one of the reasons why I made the freedom to serve, you know, one of the priorities in command was to see what barriers we could break down for military families so they can truly rise to their best, you know. And I frankly wouldn't be in the military without my father's push and his example, and the ability to serve for these past 25 years has been, you know, because of my family. You know, my brothers and sisters who have been my biggest champions throughout every assignment. I'm excited to show them a little bit of Maxwell when they're here for the ceremony this week. But they created the foundation of who I am today. And my mother just always demanded that her children be competent and confident, compassionate, and be visible. Because she had to fight for most of her life to do that, and then wanted her children to have greater success than she had. So for all 5 of us, who we are started with our family, and I hope that my command tour has made my mother proud.
Sure it has. Okay, next picture.
Oh.
Here we have COVID tabletop exercise, and of course COVID ops pandemic has been a huge part of everyone's life this last 2 years. And talk to your ideas on what happened and how the team got after it, etc.
Absolutely. I could not be prouder of the women and men at Maxwell Air Force Base and how we fought through COVID. We really embraced General Webbs, who was our AETC commander for most of my tour, just an extraordinary leader. His vision was fight through COVID, right? We still have to operate and continue our sessions pipeline, continue our education, 2 of our top missions here at Air University, keep our missions going and ensure that our men and women in service are ready to fight tonight, whether that's in support of a combatant commander deploying forward, whether that's responding to a crisis here. And we could not do that without our trusted care guardians of the Med Group leading us through the way. And this picture here was us sitting with Don Douglas. You don't see her in the photo. She was the safety officer for the Department of Defense Education Activity, DODEA. They oversee the school we have here on Maxwell Air Force Base. And this was, one of my first engagements. I came into command wearing a mask in my change of command, and we're going to be, wearing masks as I go out. And, I kept thinking, we're going to come to the end of the pandemic. The pandemic we're still fighting through, but over the course of time, with the help of Dr. Ricky Cicada, who was the public health officer for the duration of my command, and so many extraordinary folks who helped us fight through. Our medical group continued to help us with how do we survive and operate in a pandemic and do so safely. And this was the meeting where we were figuring out how to reopen the Maxwell Elementary Middle School. Because I know not just as a mom, but as a leader, you can't rise to your best if you're also trying to be a primary educator for your children. Mm-hmm. 6th grade math was a struggle for Eddie and I. When we had been in DC, when we were coming here and all the schools closed down, and we were trying to help keep our son educated and engaged as everybody was trying to figure out virtual schooling. And so reopening the Maxwell Elementary Middle School in the pandemic to us was a top priority. And so here we were with the Med Group team over at DODEA at Maxwell Elementary Middle School and figuring out ways to keep it safe. And I have to give a huge shout out to our public health team, our medical group team, to Principal Pittman at the Maxwell Elementary Middle School, to Dr. Coleman, who is the superintendent, and Ms. Dawn Douglas, who partnered with us every step of the way. And I'm proud to say we reopened the school, we got our kids, kept our children safe, one of our most vulnerable populations, and we fought through. And our medical group, my gosh, Maxwell was one of the first bases to figure out how to get the cold storage freezer to ensure we could make the vaccines, to get the vaccines as soon as possible and then keep them viable. And that was just an extraordinary lead by Lieutenant Colonel Joey Ortiz, who led our MDOS squadron over at our medical support squadron over at the Med Group. And then just the other day I got to go and say goodbye to Lieutenant Schaefer, who she was the one that and present her a coin. She was the one who did the majority of the logistics when we did Operation Warp Speed in the Honor Guard hangar. And that was our mass vaccination effort to get as fast as possible and safely as possible as many people vaccinated, and just did such an extraordinary job making that happen. And then it was all of the public health working groups, just getting information out to the community. The number of times we sat in this studio and just, with my former command chief, Mike Morgan, and we simply just wanted to communicate, here's what's going on, here's where our community levels are, here's how you keep yourself safe. And it was our public health team that helped guide us through that. And then I think about Lieutenant Colonel Brian Steinke. And, midway through my command, realized that really needed somebody who could wake up every day and be that single point of contact thinking about COVID, who could integrate, how do we make sure we're doing testing? How do we make sure we have enough supplies? How do we get those simmer machines that really enabled us to open up the Air University classrooms and keep people safe? How do we make sure we're communicating internally and externally about what our COVID is in conjunction with our public affairs partners? And so I remember one night I was talking to my awesome vice commander, Michelle Tarkowski, and I said, hey, I feel like we got to get somebody that can help us lead, be that leader to integrate things in the wing and across the campus on COVID to free us up to get after some of the other missions we need to do. And we called Brian Steinke that night and said, congratulations, you're our new director of COVID operations. And Brian said, got it, ma'am. And he, chose a senior enlisted leader, Master Sergeant Webb from a different squadron. He was at the time our chief of safety, and we just got to pass him the flag and welcome him as the new operational OSS Operations Support Squadron commander. And he's still our director of COVID ops. And then he picked a senior listed leader from another squadron, Master Sergeant Lisa Webb from the comm squadron, and they just got after it. And we have been able to, with the vision of General Webb, fight through COVID. It has just been just amazing to watch the team and what they do. And, I also at this time want to say a huge thanks to my civic leader, one of two of them. I've got Virginia Whitfield and Laura McClendon. Because Virginia Whitfield, in the height of COVID, helped connect us to all of the hospitals locally, so we could truly understand the bed capacity and what that meant, and make some good decisions about our health protection condition levels for the installation. Our goal was to give our 45 mission partners maximum flexibility to operate their missions. When you've got 45 partners, all their missions are so different. And, when you are limiting workforce, when you think about the new international officers and the new Air War College students and ACSC students, a big part of their educational experience is connection. And when we say, okay, we're going to shut down the classrooms and, limit your capacity, that limits their Air War College experience and their ACSC experience and their Senior NCO Academy experience. And so really just want to give our commanders and command teams maximum flexibility to make decisions about their missions while we're still meeting the intent and spirit of the Center for Disease Control, for the Department of Defense, and the Air Force guidance. I do also want to say, give a huge shout out to Brigadier General Rawls from Air War College. He was a great partner through this. We had a lot of conversations about, okay, how do we, I wanted to get his perspective from a commandant running a schoolhouse of some of the decisions I was making as the installation commander and how that impacted his ability to operate. Because it's important, you just can't make these decisions in a vacuum. And he was a great partner and mentor throughout all of that. So General Rawls, if you're out there, thank you. I really appreciated our conversations. And then General Hecker, my boss, for my command, who has, congratulations, has transitioned off to be the USAFE commander. We're so excited for him, but he allowed me complete freedom to command throughout my tour. We talked about that in our very first engagement, and it's easy to say, hey sir, hey boss, I want freedom to command, and then please, just like when you're bowling, you got the bumper rails up, just bump me back in if you think I've gone too far. And he's like, you got it. And it wasn't just that he said that, but he did that, and I'm so grateful for him as a leader. So for everybody out there, I'll say it for the last time. The health and safety of all of us depends on the actions of each of us. And so the more you do your part to execute safe COVID protocols, whether it is the personal screening, whether it's getting that booster shot, whether it's masking up in those mass, gatherings when you're off base in particular, the more you do your part, we will be able to fight through. And so for everybody that's done that, I just want to say thank you.
Great. Okay, let's see what we have here. We have the Freedom to Serve Committee.
Freedom
So
to
this has been a
serve.
big hallmark of your time here, and it encompasses so many things. So tell us for a couple minutes about this.
Oh my goodness. So these were the original Freedom to Serve champions. Coming into the command, I set 3 priorities: fight tonight, fight tomorrow, and the freedom to serve, with the command ethos of just do right. And the Freedom to Serve initiative was all about removing barriers and cultivating conditions so that airmen, guardians, and their families could rise to their best as part of a fully inclusive force. And instantly I knew that as I set out and started setting objectives and priorities for the wing, I needed to have to bring in someone to lead that. And the first leader of that was Lieutenant Colonel Andrew Milligan, goes by Millie. He just found out this week that he was selected for colonel. So, and he is now leading the operations group course over at the Acre Center. So congratulations, Millie. And kind of pulled him in and said, I'm not quite sure how we're going to get after this, but I think we just need to start with listening and getting in close proximity with particularly with people who don't share our views. We're at an interesting time in our nation where we are, there's a lot of focus and discussion and on do we have truly diverse and inclusive organizations and policies and procedures, and there's a lot of review on that, and some of that is very uncomfortable for people, very uncomfortable for people. And I think when I got here, I was like, how do I approach that? We live here in Montgomery, Alabama, that frankly is the confluence of the Confederacy and the civil rights. And there are so many opportunities to learn, to listen, to leverage our past and understand how we came to where we are right now, and use that to help shape our future. I love something that Maya Angelou says, who our just do right ethos comes after. And she says, when you know better, you do better. And I think to first do better, we have to have a true understanding of how we got to where we are today as a nation and tell our full story. And early on in my command, I knew that I needed some help with that because I've certainly faced some barriers in my own career and have had, some challenges trying to navigate through that. So I had come to know Mr. Bryan Stevenson through the book Just Mercy and the work that he has done for decades to right wrongs in our nation. And particularly men and women wrongly accused and not given fair due process who ended up on death row wrongly. And he righted that. Particularly the story of Mr. Ray Hitton, who Just Mercy is about. And that's how I came to know Mr. Bryan Stevenson. So in the first month of my command, that's Mr. Bryan Stevenson in the middle there, I went down and met with him and said, I know that freedom to serve will be a priority of mine throughout my command, but I'm not quite sure how to get after that. And so from that moment, he became a partner on Freedom to Serve. And he lended members of his staff to work with Lieutenant Colonel Milligan and all the Freedom to Serve champions. And that's Virginia Whitfield, also in the photo in the red jacket. She's one of our civic leaders. And I knew we had to do this as a base community partnership and truly figure out how to cultivate those conditions so airmen can rise to their best. And one of the things Mr. Bryan Stevenson, and he is the CEO and president of the Equal Justice Initiative. And here in Montgomery, he has the Peace and Justice Memorial, as well as the Legacy Museum. And I'm so thrilled that we were able to incorporate his museums and his learning and understanding and his voice in all of our command courses. And so every command team that's coming here through Air University to go out and lead in our Air Force and our Space Force, they get up close and personal with Mr. Stevenson and get to benefit from his experience and the experiences he has built here at the Peace and Justice Memorial and the Legacy Museum here in Montgomery. And so they get a chance to really immerse in that and then take that back to them as they go and lead diverse teams all across our Air and Space Force. I think that's so powerful. But I remember in our first conversation, he talked to me about, and it was about I think a 2-hour conversation. It was supposed to be just hello, I'd like to meet you and like to, just see if our teams can integrate to work together and be able to truly shape the community and the base for the better. And in that first engagement, he had talked to me about the markers that he has put up all over Montgomery. And as we talked about this place being the confluence of the Confederacy and the Civil Rights Movement, he wanted to make sure that some of these markers that don't make people feel welcome are contextualized, and they have more of the full story of what Montgomery was for our nation and how Montgomery has shaped our nation today. And it was this Markers to Inspire he talked about. And that inspired us. And I think that's where, we kind of came together and started working on some Markers to Inspire for Montgomery. And so I'm just truly grateful to Lieutenant Colonel Milligan for leading, the Freedom to Serve initiative in my first year, and then Lieutenant Colonel Chris Troutman, who picked it up in my second and continues to lead it. And a lot of it is just these listening sessions, getting folks together. And they were doing them over at Rickenbacker's, and where we serve our coffee, so they called them, the espresso yourself. And they got out into FTAC, and they got out over to ALS, and they got in these different forums and small groups, and they were going out to units saying, we just want to listen and tell us what your barriers are. And those barriers could have been our travel voucher system. They could have been, in some cases they were. In some cases the barriers were, just simple processes around the base, or not understanding how to get after something. And then they would take those and work them at the lowest level and try and resolve them. And so, you've got like commander's action lines and all those kind of things, but I love the proximity and the connection. And sometimes those barriers, they were about race or gender or, other protected categories, but sometimes they were just people having housing issues or other things that we just weren't aware of. And when we knew better, we were able to do better and really truly elevate the quality of life and quality of mission here at Maxwell.
Great accomplishments.
That is the team.
Okay, here's a great photo of you at the opening of the new air traffic control tower. But there's also another symbolic moment here with the tactical cap. So I wonder if you could talk about infrastructure and also, again, another example of freedom to serve.
Thank you. This was a beautiful day, and where we got to cut the ribbon on and go from the oldest air traffic control tower in our Air Force to the newest. And it was that first week, Command Chief Mike Morgan, who was my command chief for my first year, and he was telling me about how bad the air traffic control tower was and how our airmen were just making it work, right? That's what we do. We just, we do the best with what we have. But in our Air Force, we promise excellence, right? And so I remember that day, Chief Morgan and I had been off base doing an engagement, and I was in, blues and a skirt and high heels, and he's talking to me about this in the car on the way back. And so I was like, well, let's go see it. And that was my typical thing, like whenever you're, let me put eyes on it. And so probably not the best day to walk up in the air traffic control tower, and it's it was a challenge in itself, and then to do it in heels and a skirt presented a whole different level of challenge. But so we walked up there, and it was just, and I'm not a tall person, but you kind of had to hunch down to get up there, and many of our air traffic controllers were, are much taller than me. And it was just they had all kinds of blind spots on for the flight line for the airfield. If they was an emergency, they would have to rappel down. We didn't have all the best equipment for them. It just wasn't a place that lived up to our promise of excellence in the United States Air Force. So this is where, that Fight Tomorrow comes in. Our priority of Fight Tomorrow is the choices and decisions we are making today about people, about processes, about programs, about policies that we're making today that are going to make it better for those that follow. So when, the next team comes in, they're more ready to fight tonight. That's what Fight Tomorrow is all about. And this is where I got to step in and build upon the legacy of the wing commanders that were ahead of me. And it was Brigadier General retired Trent Edwards, who about 10 years ago, who started the fight to get this new air traffic control tower. And it's a little bit crazy to say, oh my gosh, that took 10 years, right? But he was the one that began to champion it, working with former Congresswoman Martha Roby and Senator Shelby and the Alabama delegation to say, this is a need that Maxwell has. And they began to help champion it. And, you know, we got it funded right at the end of Pat Carley's command. He was my predecessor here in command. And then over my command, you know, got to watch, us bring down the old air traffic control tower. It's gone, you know, and it just like that, it was gone. And then all the work to bring it up, you know, working with the FAA and getting the equipment and you know, our civil engineering team, working with the Corps of Engineers and watching that air traffic control tower rise. It was like watching hope rise, right? And then got to invite in, you know, all of our Alabama delegation, you know, Virginia Whitfield, Leslie Sanders, and Laura McClendon, our civic leaders, who were great advocates to get this moving in the military construction MilCon process, getting the attention and visibility it needed. And then, you know, absolutely got to give a shout out to our Chamber of Commerce, Montgomery Chamber of Commerce, President Anna Buckaloo. You know, at the time it was a Chairman John Yelverton, Executive Vice President Sharon Rose, and all of the team over there who kept this visible and kept this on the radar of people to understand, got people here to walk up those stairs over the last 10 years. And, you know, as it went from General Edwards to General Tullis, a new Air University commander who was my predecessor as the Air Base Wing Commander, to Colonel Shaffa, to General Killo, to Pat Carley, to Eries Mentzer, right? Went through all these commanders who just kept continuing to champion it, and then I got to cut the ribbon. So it was really great that day, as General Edwards got to stand with me, the wing commander that first brought the visibility to it, and then he stood there with me and cut that ribbon with all of our air traffic control towers, air traffic controllers, both that serve here now and that had served here in the past, and cut that ribbon and opened that opportunity to provide greater mission capability for, frankly, the busiest DV airfield I think we have in our Air Force. The number of folks that come here and connect with Air University and all of our great missions. Yeah. It was a truly humbling moment.
And Colonel Mentzer, the air traffic control tower is one of a series of infrastructure improvements, and I thought maybe you could segue over to the campus plan, formerly the 2030 plan, and just talk for briefly a minute or two about that initiative.
Sure. You know, we have this amazing historical infrastructure, and with that comes the opportunity of really being able to celebrate, you know, kind of the legacies starting from the Wright brothers and the, you know, Air Tactical School and all of that we are part of a long blue line of. But also 100-year-old facilities, you know, and my guess is the way we operated and offered officer and enlisted PME and officer sessions. We do 2/3 of officer sessions here, you know, and the number of international officers we integrated into Air University. What that was, you know, even 10 years ago is different than what it is today. And so how do we you know, create the campus that provides the conditions to deliver the world's greatest Air Force, right? To show our international partners the world's greatest Air Force, to help people come here and be able to pull up a little bit from the mission and be able to focus on how do we remain leaders and relevant in the great power competition. Right. You know, our adversaries are, you know, quickly catching pace with us, and we need great thought leaders to help us shape where we are today to where we need to go to continue to be able to create peace and democracy across the world. And you know, that starts with what are the conditions with which you are in to be able to have those incredible thought conversations and build those strategic leaders we need for the future. And so we started having these conversations about, with all the commandants here, what does your mission look like 5-10 years from now? and what is the infrastructure you need to be able to deliver that mission. And so a huge shout out to Greg Rollins, who's our base civil engineer here, and his team, who came up with this vision of an Air University campus plan. And it's a 4-phase, $1 billion, send your contributions today, plan that gets after building the campus for where we are going 5 to 10 years from now. And so huge shout out and thanks to all the commandants who, sent their best folks to sit down and start talking about their future missions, to you, to Mr. Tatum, to Dr. Conversino, that helped lead those conversations and helped really kind of herd everybody together and what do we need, right? What does the campus of the future look like? And not just for the classrooms and the spaces for our sessions missions through the Home Center or just, for educational missions through all the different colleges and Barnes Center, but where do they need to be between Maxwell and Gunter? And then what are the supporting facilities, the gyms, the DFACs, that need to accompany those? So when you're outside the classroom, we're helping make sure you remain resilient and ready for the fight. And so thank you to General Hecker, who was a huge champion for that plan, and to everybody that really helped us think through that. So that's our number 2 MILCON priority. Excited that phase 1 will help us build enough capacity for the growing international officer mission that Colonel Alex Gainster has been leading and just doing a really great job. He's been a great mission partner. And then also another really awesome mission partner, Terry Jones over at the Acre Center. Right now they've got I love their LDC mission. It's one of my favorite missions here. All your missions are my favorite. The LDC mission is really awesome. And Terry Jones has been a great partner in command. But her missions, everything from First Sergeant Academy to some of the chaplain school, and they're all just kind of like wedged in wherever we could fit them. Right. And those missions deserve better. And Terry's been one of the huge advocates in the campus plan. Colonel Terry Jones, she's the commandant of the Acre Center. They're in that phase 1. And then another great mission partner is Colonel Tony Tony Babcock. I keep calling him Tony Barnes because he runs the Barnes Centers. Sorry. Tony Babcock, not just a great mission partner, but a great neighbor. He's my next door neighbor, really championing what are the conditions we need for enlisted PME. And how do we better integrate officer and enlisted PME? Because as I've learned with my first command chief, Mike Morgan, and my current command chief, Lee Hoover, it's a command team. And so we have to do our education as command teams so that best prepares us when we're out there leading at the squadron, the group, the wing, the flight level. And so that first phase will get after, preparing for the expansion of our international officer presence here at Air University. It will get after ensuring we have the proper conditions that are properly integrated and not just kind of a pickup wedge game throughout the campus for our Acre Center. And then also, our Gunter gym is not what our airmen deserve. And so we really want to get a new gym over at the Acre Center, over at Gunter Annex. That's where the majority of our enlisted force live, in on-base housing. And then that's also where the majority of our enlisted PME is conducted. And that campus deserves a much better gym. And so it was for me, a top priority to get that gym in that first phase so we can do better for our enlisted force.
Great. Let's transition over to the tactical cap, which really has, hits across the Air Force, right? Yeah. So thank you for not showing a picture of my hair out of the bun. But, Alabama is a hot, humid climate. And for those that have thick hair like mine, I think the reality of just how much hair I have came. I just, had shoulder surgery back in May, and huge thank you to my amazing husband Eddie and my adorable little boy Jax, who as a tag team had to learn how to do my hair. And so, and my son said, "Mommy, it's too much." And so, but it takes a village to get this hair into a bun every day, especially in this climate. With the humidity, it's a lot of applying product throughout the day just to keep myself within standard. And then when I got here, I was literally wearing, 3 hats per day. And I would end the day with the largest hat we sold at AFB's,
just to accommodate the amount of hair I had, because the hat wasn't adjustable. And then when it's in that hat, especially when you're outside for a good majority of the day, it wasn't breathable and, created, I was losing hair. And this is not just me, this is something I've struggled with a lot throughout my career, with some of our hats that we've had. And it's not just me. As I kind of walked around with Mike Morgan, my first command chief, this was something that a lot of people were having a challenge with. So Chief Morgan and I decided we are going to, remove a barrier. And so we decided that, went over to AFB's and they had these caps commercial on the shelf available. So they're already available. And it said, we thought this makes sense. So we decided to implement the tactical cap. And we are very grateful to General Wilson, who was our Vice Chief of Staff, and Chief Master Sergeant of the Air Force Bass. They happened to be down visiting on a trip, and we talked to them about the tactical caps and some of the limitations that they provided, particularly for people in this hot, humid climate down in Montgomery, Alabama. And they became advocates for us. They got it into the uniform board, and now we were able to wear tactical caps Air Force wide. And for Chief Morgan and I, and now Chief Hoover, this is really a story about what is a barrier for you. And if you are closest to the problem, you are closest to the solution. Mm-hmm. And so we really want to use this as an opportunity for airmen and guardians to be empowered and say, if you need something to change, just get after it with your passion. And so huge thanks to General Wilson and Chief Master of the Air Force Bass, who became great advocates for us. When they showed up, we put on the tactical caps and they were like, yes, and before long, it was out there Air Force wide.
I know it's helped defenders on the gates and provides, ability to see better as people coming up. And that, so it's a big win for everyone.
And I got to say, for our defenders, I fully recognize the heritage and the history behind the beret, and the pride that many feel wearing that beret. But for, some of our defenders, not having, the shade outside when the majority of their duties are outside performing that duty. And then when you have the leather band and the polyester, which is really hard to keep it in that defender, configuration that makes them look sharp and professional. And it's really hard to, a lot of work goes into making that, putting that hat together, giving them the hat that's got the back mesh that's a little cooler, and then the shading in the front. It makes them more safe performing their duties. Right. And you can still recognize them by all their gear. So they are defenders when they're out and about. And so it was important to us to give them that a little bit more freedom to serve, to allow them to wear the tactical cap too. Yeah. And they've got the choice; they can wear the beret or the cap.
Right.
But
right. Those extra options.
Extra options.
So here is some defenders, and we're here with General Brown, and talk about the sort of frontline folks that do the work, whether it's the defenders or people doing contracts or whatever else happens at the 42nd.
Oh yeah, so that often that first impression is our defenders at the front gate. And they have the duty every day to provide that safety and security for everybody here at Maxwell Air Force Base in Gunter Annex, And, there aren't a lot of bases that sit in a capital city. And so, and we've got a great relationship with Chief Albert, the Chief of Police, and Major Harris down at the Montgomery Police Department. We're fully integrated with them. And so, on some of our toughest days when things happen, and they do, and there have been times where we've had to elevate our use of force to protect missions, and they're just it's just been an incredible partnership with the Montgomery Police Department. So thank you, MPD, for the great partnership. But for us, again, back to that excellence. We want to make sure that our defenders have those conditions to rise to their best. And right now they don't, frankly. We do our screening mission for all the people that are uncleared to come on the base over at Kelly Street. And they're doing it in a kind of a facility that doesn't give them the right operational security, the right standoff distance, not even storm shelter. I mean, tend to get some inclement weather here in Montgomery. And so it's really not the best conditions for them to execute their mission. They show up and they do it, and they do it exceptionally well. And they've deterred, they've deterred things coming on the installation that we would not want. And they're doing that daily, I mean, last night, was working with the JAG and the command post and, updating me on something, we had to work to get right last night, and of some people that we had to help be their better self. And so that's what our defenders do every day. They're that first impression and that first line of defense for our base safety and security. And so we have spent a lot of time, and Chief Hoover, you see Colonel Brad Ledford in that picture, as well as our Security Forces commander and his team. And you'll see in there, what I love about this picture is this is General Brown, who we got to talk about the challenge of our commercial vehicle inspection gate, which is our #1 MILCOM priority. And what I love in this picture is you see not just, our airmen, but you also see our civilian defenders, because we are a blended force in our security team. And if you're listening to this, we are hiring. We have, I think it's about $60,000 a year. You can come be a civilian defender at Maxwell Air Force Base. And we welcome you to come serve. usajobs.gov. You can find those opportunities, but it shows the connection between our civilian and our military defenders. And we have championed, along with our civic leaders, every opportunity they get the chance. They bring people to our commercial vehicle inspection gate and talk about how we can make this better for our civilian defenders. So we're excited. Right now, we are postured to see this gate funded in 23. So thanks to everybody, and General Brown for being a great advocate, as well as General Robinson, our new AATC commander, and Air Force IMSC. And so we're in a good place to build a new commercial vehicle inspection gate starting in 23. So I want to thank everybody for doing that for those young defenders. And usually it was Senior Airman Stone from Talladega was our primary briefer over at the commercial vehicle inspection gate. And he's from, he's from Alabama, and he got the chance to connect with Alabama senators and representatives, and truly explain to him, not just as an airman, but as one of their constituents here in Alabama, what it meant for him and his fellow defenders to have a new commercial vehicle inspection gate. And just want to thank him for honestly and vulnerably sharing his story and making it better for his fellow defenders. Great.
So we were talking earlier, and sort of bookends of your time here were two big initiatives, and in between those bookends, you had another big visitor here with the president showing up.
Yes, what an honor! What an honor! Our last presidential visit at Maxwell Air Force Base was in 2015. And we are really grateful to have Mr. Terrence Henderson. He was a former maintainer who then transitioned into a civilian career, and today serves as my director of staff, who just has all this corporate history. And I was sitting in a meeting, and got a text from OSI and says, "Call me," and Agent Knabe. And I was, you never want to get the text from OSI. Oh boy, what's coming? And she goes, this was in March of this year, and she said, in 4 days, Vice President Harris is going to be landing at Maxwell. I thought she was kidding. I was like, okay, that's funny. Thanks for the humor today. No, really, she was like, the advanced agents are on the ground, and she'll be here in 4 days. And what I love about my team is to watch them excel in those fight tonight missions. And it was like, here we go, right? And, kind of called in the immediate team and said, okay, 4 days, we have to make sure we've got all the proper conditions to properly welcome, Vice President Harris to Maxwell Air Force Base. This will be her first impression of Maxwell Air Force Base. She was coming here for the 57th anniversary of the Bloody Sunday up in Selma. She was going to land here along with several cabinet members and myself, General Hecker, Mayor Reed, and Congresswoman Sewell got the opportunity to welcome her and then transition her up to Selma. So the team, as they always do, they rise to the occasion as part of that fight tonight and being ready, when those things come. And so we got to have an exceptional visit welcoming Vice President Harris. Most bases, we'll see one, White House visit during their tour. And about 30 days later, it was now Agent Cervante. He's our new commander of our OSI detachment. Got another call from him and said, hey, in 4 days, President Biden is coming. I was like, okay, guys, that's funny. And I was like, no, I'm serious. And so then President Biden arrived, and he wanted to land at Maxwell as part of his trip up to Troy to go see where some of the javelins were being produced to support the Ukraine effort. Yeah. And so huge shout out to Lieutenant Colonel Chris Troutman. When the visit came, I turned to him and said, you are now Director of Presidential Arrival. And Chris Troutman, he's the Comm Squadron Commander here at Maxwell. He quickly put together a team. And what I loved about these two visits is that we were able to connect airmen and guardians from Maxwell with their Commander-in-Chief and with their Vice President. And the chance to get up close and personal with their Commander-in-Chief and Vice President. And so they got to get up and close and personal with Air Force 1 and 2. And then Chris Troutman just did a phenomenal job. And so it was great to welcome our highest leadership to Maxwell Air Force Base in Gunter Annex.
Great. We have a lightning round here.
Okay.
Two last images. We'll show them quickly. We have one last one, I think, here. Romay Davis was this week. And if you want to talk about that for a minute, and then final thoughts.
Yeah, this was the honor of a career. So Miss Romay Davis is 102. She is the oldest living member of the 688th Central Postal Directory Battalion. Because of you and Lexi Aldridge, I got to meet her and learn her story last year, and how the 688th resolved the Army's crisis of mail back in 1945. 17 million pieces caught in a France warehouse, and they needed somebody to fix that. So people serving forward were connected with their families back home. And 855 women, predominantly Black, all-female Women's Army Air Corps unit, went forward to England and France, and in 3 months resolved this crisis of mail. Almost 80 years later, in March of this year, President Biden awarded them the Congressional Gold Medal. Of those 855 women, 6 are alive to receive that honor. Wow. And Miss Romay Davis, at 102, is the oldest living member. And so just this week, we got to go down to City Hall and with all of our community partners, recognize her Congressional Gold Medal. And it's so important to give people their flowers while they're still with us. And, yes. It has been the honor of a career to be a part of such an incredible moment. And I loved that, Master Sergeant Wills and Master Sergeant Borges led this effort. Ian Mangum, who has done so many amazing projects during here at Maxwell, he created this phenomenal shadow box to give her. When I first met her, she told me she was heartbroken that she lost her uniform shortly after returning from service. Right. Shortly after returning from World War II, somebody stole them from her. And Miss Denise Kester put her whole heart into finding every piece of her uniform through World War II collectors and everything else. And Ian built a shadow box that had her uniform plus flags flown over the locations where she served. And we got to present that to her, recognize her gold medal, because I stand on her shoulders. I am here because she paved the freedom to serve. And so to be able to give thanks and praise and recognition to someone who made it possible for me to be here, truly humbling.
Great. Colonel Mentzer, we're going to miss you. And thanks for all you've done for Maxwell, Gunter, and the larger Montgomery community and the Air Force.
Thank you, sir. And thank you for your partnership. And for everybody out there listening, just do right. Just do right. Just like Rosa Parks, who was here as an Army Air Corps civilian in 1941 and saw better on Maxwell and applied that to make our nation better. You all have that ability to do that too. So as you come here to the base that's truly made our nation better, do your part. Just do right. Thank you.
Thank you.